Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rutherford, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Attorney General, thank you for your long testimony today. Listen, I want to talk a little bit about policy, because everybody understands that in a large organization you're going to have bias. And as was mentioned earlier, everybody accepts that you can have bias until it crosses into the workplace and it affects actions and how you conduct investigations. And that's when leadership and policy comes into play. Can you tell me, has Special Agent Strzok, I don't want to know if he's been found guilty of a charge, but is there a policy charge against Special Agent Strzok at this time?
There's an inquiry being conducted by our watchdog, the Inspector General, and he'll reach a conclusion, and if he reaches an adverse conclusion, then there would be proposed discipline.
Okay, and I'm not asking for the conclusion, because clearly we got to wait for due process. But the question is there a policy violation that Mr. Strzok is being charged with at this time?
Well, the charge would occur at the conclusion of the investigation. Okay.
All right, and let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier that offering immunity in a non-custodial interview is not unusual, as happened with Cheryl Mills and several other top State Department aides. My question is, on a policy, during an investigation, you give immunity and you don't record the meeting, the interview? That to me is unprecedented. We discussed this with Director Wray last week. Is that normal policy for?
Well, Congressman, as you know, that investigation occurred before I arrived, and so I don't know the details of what decisions were made or why. In my experience, we typically would not record a witness interview, but on the decision of whether or not to grant immunity, that would be based upon the facts and circumstances of the case, and I just don't know what they were since I wasn't involved. But the Inspector General, if there's anything suspected inappropriate about that, he'd have the authority to review it.
See, here's the situation that I think the American people are looking at. We have a situation where a special agent does something very unprecedented in an investigation by offering immunity and failing to record. You know, it was questioned earlier, was there a proffered statement during that interview? And I don't recall if you said no, but I suspect the real answer is nobody knows, because it wasn't recorded.
Well, if there had been a proffer, typically that would have been written down. I just don't know, I have no knowledge about what was done in that particular case.
Okay, so here we have the situation with Special Agent Strzok, which is really bringing the agency's integrity into question. And what's going to be important is how you and Director Wray address this at the end of the investigation. I get that, and I appreciate that, and we are really waiting to see how folks are held accountable where we think bias has affected their investigative activities. Now, what really concerns me now with Mr. Strzok is, after that situation and the others that have been mentioned earlier, do you see any reason that after President Trump's election that the Office of the Attorney General should have any reason to fear his election?
No.
And do you think the FBI should have any reason to fear the election of Donald Trump?
No.
Let me read to you. This is number 89, on page 89 of Mr. Strzok's conversations. And it says that he is worried about, hold on a second here, the New York Times probability numbers are dropping every day, talking about the election, and it says, "I'm scared for our organization." Have any idea what he's referring to there?
No, sir, I do not.
Our organization. And then on email number 89, or page 89, he says, and I keep thinking about what Dee said, what is it? Sick to one's stomach. I want to talk to you about it more, and and would like to talk to Jim and Andy too. Jim may be too much a true believer, though. Those are scary comments from a special agent talking about other folks within the agency that he's having these kind of political conversations about, and he's worried because of a presidential, the potential of a presidential election. He's worried about what that's going to do to his organization. Can you comment on that?
Yes, Congressman. Attorney General Sessions has been clear with me that our mission in this administration is to make sure we run the department and the FBI properly, and if information comes to our attention to suggest there's been any wrongdoing, to make sure we conduct an appropriate investigation that includes due process for the folks who are accused of wrongdoing, and take appropriate action if there's an adverse finding. And I think, Congressman, that I've been asked several times this issue about what reassurance we have, and the reassurance is that that's the commitment the Attorney General and I have made. That's reflected by all of this administration's appointees in the Department of Justice, a really superb, experienced team, and in particular, Christopher Wray, whom the President appointed to direct the FBI, who I believe is well-positioned to do a superb job and to promote public confidence in the future. Now, that's all we can do, Congressman, is to commit to you that we will do everything we can in the future to earn and deserve public trust.
And in closing, just let me say, if I could take just a moment, Mr. Chairman, I really do appreciate that, and I believe we have the right people in the right seats right now to root this out. But I'm going to tell you, I fear that it runs deep, and I do believe that we have the right people in place, because we have to protect the integrity of all those men and women, all those agents, all those staff folks who are good, law-abiding, hard-working heroes out there, and they deserve an agency with strong integrity like theirs. So thank you for everything you're going to do to make that happen.
Thank you very much.
And I yield back.
Chair, thanks, gentlemen. The chair understands the gentleman from Texas has some unanimous consent requests.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your kindness. And I thank the Deputy Attorney General for his testimony. I'd like to submit in the record a December 12, 2017 letter, Mr. Chairman, to the committee by 4 members of the committee, 4 women of the committee, myself, Ms. Bass, Jayapal, and Ms. Lawfren, on asking this committee to hold hearings for the women accusers of Mr. Trump to be heard. Has unanimous consent for that to be put in the record.
Objection, that will be made a part of the record.
And then I have a line of questions that I hope to put in a letter to the Deputy Attorney General that would not complete. I ask unanimous consent to put that in the record.
Without objection.
And then H.R. 3654, which is a complement to the Senate bill, follows my line of questioning regarding the protection of the integrity of the work of Special Counsel Mueller.
Without objection.
And Mr. Chairman, of scheduling, if I could stop and ask for a scheduling question, are we having another judiciary, do you think, in the next week?
Not that I know of. I do not think at this point we have any plans next week.
And let me ask, I've been sitting here listening, but as well noting a lot of meetings are going on. I would just ask the Judiciary Committee to be an active participant in the DACA fix. I mean, this is our jurisdiction, and Mr. Chairman, as I go home, despite our likes or dislikes, there are so many young people that are living in such devastating fear. And I know that our engagement with the Speaker and the leadership could really provide some comfort to young people who are right now statused, but they are so fearful that they will be unstatused that I've had adults come to me whose children are not DACA, but whose children's friends are, about the suicidal nature of many of these young people because they are so frightened. Well, so I don't know whether we could fix it in the committee, there are bills, or whether or not you'd provide a dialogue with the now present ranking member and subcommittees, ranker and chair, that we look to see how we can fix this, or at least provide a clarifying message for these DACA young people as they go home. As we go home for the Christmas holiday. We are leaving young people coming home from school into homes that they are fearful that will be raided and that they will be immediately deported and not be able to even go back to school, medical school, PhD candidates, various other academic individuals, and then, of course, people who are working I'm very concerned, Mr. Chairman.
I
I'm very
understand. I
concerned.
understand your concern. As you know, the Speaker has appointed a task force on the majority side, of which 3 members of this committee, including myself, are involved. I'll be happy to have discussions with you about it. I also don't believe that DACA recipients, where the program has been extended through March, need fear what's going to happen here. And I do hope for an outcome that allows us to have the laws of the land changed to prevent this type of illegal immigration in the future, but also address the concern of these people who were brought here illegally, in many instances by their parents. And I hope for a resolution just like you do.
Well, I'll take
It
you
may
up
not be
on-
the same resolution you want, but I do want
Well, I'll take you up on this order, and I would beg to differ that they were statused even as they came into this country through no fault of their own. So I don't want that to hang over their head that they're illegal. They've got a status here now. But let me just say that the March deadline has been, unfortunately, it seems to be encroaching on their thinking process, because the raids are still continuing with their family members. The raids are continuing in their schools, ICE places where they are. So if nothing else, let me just put on the record. We need, first of all, we need the DACA fix. I disagree that March is an appropriate time frame, that I understand what you're saying, but we certainly need the President, the Speaker of the House, the leadership of this nation to be able to indicate that the Deputy Attorney General, Homeland Security, ICE officers, FBI officers are not going to, unless there is some other element to their status, any action by them is not going to randomly deport DACA statused young people. I think that is a crucial statement to have made, and I thank the gentleman for yielding.
thank the gentleman for her comments, and the majority will definitely take them under advisement. I do want to thank the Deputy Attorney General for his participation today. I do have a couple more questions. Did former Director Comey, in sharing his memos with another individual who then shared them with a New York Times reporter, share classified information?
Congressman, I do not know the answer to that, but the Inspector General of our department has jurisdiction to review that issue.
And are you aware of the report indicating that Jim Baker, the General Counsel of the FBI, was under investigation by the FBI for sharing classified information?
I believe that I read the media account that you're referring to.
Do you still have confidence in the FBI General Counsel?
I have confidence in the FBI, and I have confidence, Mr. Chairman, that Director Wray will make appropriate decisions with regard to his staff.
And finally, in an interview with NBC's Scott MacFarlane on December 6th, you indicated that you were satisfied with how the special counsel's investigation is proceeding. Why, after you've heard all the concerns expressed here today, why are you satisfied with the course of the investigation so far?
I'm satisfied, Congressman, because based upon what I know, which is different from what accounts may appear in the media, based upon what I know, I believe Director Mueller is appropriately remaining within his scope and conducting himself appropriately. And in the event that there is any credible allegation of misconduct by anybody in his staff, that he's taking appropriate action.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will have, I have no doubt, from both sides of the aisle, additional questions in writing, and we hope that you're able to answer those and answer them expeditiously. Again, I thank you. You're a little bit ahead, not much, but a little bit ahead of Director Wray's time, and I know the sacrifice it is to prepare for this and then to give us a better part of a day to answer these questions. But they're very important. The FBI is an incredibly important law enforcement organization. In my opinion, it's still the premier law enforcement organization in the world. Again, as I said earlier, there are tens of thousands of employees there who are very dedicated to doing the right thing, upholding the rule of law, and providing justice in the fashion that the blindfolded woman with balanced scales stands for. I think the department stands for that. But I do think at the higher levels of the department, there are some serious problems. The gentleman from Florida asked some questions very much related to this. And I think that while we all have confidence in Director Wray, we also believe that there need to be some changes made, both in terms of the personnel, in terms of the protocols that are followed, and certainly in terms of getting the necessary information to this committee and whatever other appropriate committees so that all of this can be aired and the public's understanding that these problems are being solved and that they know what the nature of them are. So again, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your work in a very difficult situation as Deputy Attorney General of the United States under these circumstances.
Thank you.
And with that, without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for